Loveys, and hello, Mr. Bederow.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Happy Monday, everyone. It is May 12th, 2025, and we have finished up a late ending in the day, which is very rare for Judge Beverly Cannoni to go past scheduled closing hours. And we finished up the recross, and of the one and only Yuri Buchanan, Sergeant of Mass State Police, who today I believe was the Mortal Kombat finish him, Mr. Bederow. We have a lot to discuss. So much happened today, but let's just get into it.
Okay.
First things first, the text messages. Well, I believe that start at the text messages, right? Because this is again showing the lack of accountability by Yuri to really go against Michael Proctor, former trooper, no longer, and saying that, yes, that was unprofessional, but everything else was fine. So what were your thoughts on Alan Jackson's, discussion and his particular cross on those messages? Did they move the jury at all?
Well, I think the cross on the messages was excellent. You draw out what happened, just how awful Proctor looks, but the way he did the cross with a very willing witness, it really exposed how not credible Buchanan is. So, you're going to destroy Proctor just through what he said, which is terrible. But, Buchanan's explanations for what he perceived, what he said, what he meant, it's the kind of thing where I don't think anybody believes it. I mean, I don't think there is literally any sane person, if they were truly being honest, whatever their views of the case are,
right,
seriously believe, I mean, all kidding aside, that when he got a message about nudes or, how retarded she is, and I hate that one.
Oh.
I agree with him. I think he did that effect. I know that's like the word of the Twitter word of the week, apparently. But when he said, and I saw those messages, that I put a thumbs up emoji to acknowledge his tweet or whatever, not his tweet, his text message.
Yeah.
And that's all I meant was I was acknowledging it. I think that was to a jury. And by the way, we're told it's kind of a younger jury. I haven't been there, haven't seen it, but we've heard that. So they know how texting works. They know how emojis work. They know about all this stuff. The idea that this clown is literally being told, I haven't found any nudes yet. And I acknowledge that. Who believes that? I mean, seriously. And every message that he got from Proctor, he wouldn't admit anything other than, well, that's what it says. He refused to acknowledge remembering getting it or what it meant. He just tried to divorce himself from the text chain. And I think that went very effectively and will lend itself to a really strong argument in summation that if this guy is so willing to deny the obvious, to deny in the grand scheme of things, not that important as it relates to him anyway, and he's going to lie about that, then what makes you think he's not willing about lying about things that actually do matter, for which there is no paper trail? There's evidence revealing itself to me and finding taillight pieces, things of that nature. So I just thought that the text message cross was as bad as you'll ever see. I mean, I think it was truly embarrassing. And this goes on top of everything else he's already said about denying who the lead investigator is. He's denying knowing about all these various things going on in the investigation, which are either harmful to the prosecution case or embarrassing to him, which as the supervisor of the case is just, who's going to believe that? This is the only state police witness. This is the clean one.
Oh,
this is the guy that they want to say, don't worry about Proctor or anyone else. We have, Buchanan's on the case, right? And the reality is he's one of the worst police witnesses I've ever seen. And that's kind of surprising. You wouldn't expect that. He clearly was not prepared. He was a little less obnoxious today in his demeanor, but
Yes.
he still dug in. His words were still ridiculous. He still lacks so much credibility, and he wants to fight every point, and all he's doing is establishing that he's just in the tank for the prosecution. Now, you can understand that he's a police witness.
Right.
He clearly is just not open-minded. I mean, he's arguing about text between Karen and Higgins, saying that she's pursuing him, and clearly, he's just responding, and that's all it really means. It's her problem, not Higgins's problem. He's been exposed with all this Higgins evidence that he never pursued. This looks terrible.
I totally agree.
For hours and hours, you're not even talking about inverted videos yet or anything like that.
Yeah.
It is surprising to me how awful a witness he was.
Now, Mr. Bederow, if we go back to the first trial, in my personal opinion, Yuri didn't do, well, not nearly as bad of a job as this trial, right? Retrial has destroyed him and his credibility. But in the first trial, I mean, like, he wasn't awesome, don't get me wrong, but there wasn't as many holes, and seeing that just inability for him to look at anyone with a badge or associated with a badge as could have possibly or should have possibly been looked at or treated in the same way as Karen Read, right?
I think the reason why you didn't see it at the first trial is because he wasn't the anchor man. I mean, he's kind of like, the famous picture of Atlas holding the Massachusetts State Police world on his back. There is no Proctor, there is no Tully, which raises other questions about the credibility of the prosecution as a whole to do it that way and to risk their own credit or his own credibility, the jury. But because they had Buchanan do it by himself, because they're making him a proxy for Proctor, for Tully, and the agency as a whole, it shouldn't have been the least bit surprising to Brennan that this was going to be the guy that an experienced and skilled cross-examiner was going to exploit everything about the investigation. And I think the most stunning part of it is how ill-prepared he was. And that's Brennan's fault. Let's be clear about that. I mean, it goes back 3 days. His demeanor was terrible. His parsing of words was terrible. The way he fought over things that were so obvious was terrible. It's obvious they didn't prepare, even looking at the evidence. If they had looked at the evidence, you never would have had that spectacle the other day related to the sneakers when they couldn't bag evidence. I mean, in some ways, I'm kind of surprised there was no cross on that, although it's there for summation, ready for everyone to see. But he just came off as smug, arrogant, dishonest, investigatively not concerned, if you will, just without any lack of intellectual curiosity of what happened. He had all of the red flags and indicia of an unreliable witness. And I think that the jury is really going to have a dark view of law enforcement that handled this case because they live there.
Yes.
They're people, and they're only going to evaluate the evidence in the case. But if you don't think these people are thinking, my God, these are the people in our county, this is how they are. They're liking these texts. They're doing all this. They're claiming who cares because, Proctor has a First Amendment right to text whatever he wants, which is a whole nother show, perhaps.
Wasn't that wild? I said, oh, he's going First Amendment. When you're taught, like, I don't have a First Amendment right. And all of us medical professionals in the chat would let you know, our patients were not allowed to say to our bosses, via text that I'm looking for nudes in a patient's phone. You know what I mean? Like, there's privacy there. I mean, there's so many different, not just a HIPAA violation. There have been cases and that are coming out more and more that what you write in your cell phone will, and can be used against you as it relates to any malpractice or malfeasance. And people are just still ballsy as hell, if you ask me. I mean, it's egregious what we saw.
It is. It's funny because normally I look through as much as I can
Mhm.
through the prism of being a lawyer. So you always analyze
Yes.
everything legally, whatever. But when he started talking about the First Amendment, I'm not even talking as a lawyer. Like, forget the whole legality and whatever, but just talk about the absurdity of this guy defending a corrupt scumbag like Michael
Yeah.
Proctor, okay, on the basis that he can say whatever he wants to his little boys group. All men, by the way. I wish that came out. Hopefully,
Mm,
information they'll draw their attention to that, because they never would have done that in front of women.
no.
They knew it was wrong. But
Yes.
anyway, for him to wrap himself up in the First Amendment and say, Michael Proctor has a right on his own time to talk like that, is, whatever. But how do you not juxtapose that against this guy wasted taxpayer money chasing down rubber ducky people? I mean, literally all around town, and lecturing them when they would say, I'm just trying to exercise my First Amendment right. And he's lecturing them how it could hurt someone's feelings and this and that. Well, how do you think it would hurt Karen Read's feelings if it came out that you called her retarded,
Oh,
or you're liking texts about her nudes? Now, I appreciate they didn't intend for that to ever come out,
yeah.
but putting that aside, the scary part is, this is who they are, and there's no remorse here. I mean, he can say it was inappropriate, it wasn't honor, it
Mm,
wasn't integrity, but when you see him parse words and refuse to say, I liked it because I shouldn't have done that, it's remarkable. Because all this guy had to do, if he was going to be the main witness for them from the police standpoint, and this goes back to Brennan's absolute failure to prep him, you have to have kind of a big boy conversation before the trial starts with a guy like Buchanan. And what you would have to tell him is, look, I'm not calling Proctor, so sorry, buddy, but you're going to have to deal with it. You're going to get the questions.
right.
And let's cut the shit about he's not the lead investigator. Everybody knows it. It is what it is. Admit it. It doesn't harm my case. Just do it. You can say he got fired for doing terrible things. He shouldn't have done it. It was outrageous. Do it instead of trying to walk away from it. And most importantly, as it relates to himself,
Mm-hmm.
just say, you know what, in hindsight, now that I've had a chance to think about it, what I did was totally unprofessional. I should not have liked it. I was his supervisor. I should have stopped it. I should have told him it was a failure on my part. I own that. I got my 5 days, slap on the wrist. I apologize for that. I feel terrible. But ladies and gentlemen, it didn't impact where we went looking for evidence and what we did. And these people refuse to even do that. That's how dirty they are. That's how much integrity and honor, ironically, they lack. They're not even willing to just eat that and move on. And the prosecutor is apparently unable to get them to do that. And, what's interesting is at the first trial, even though it was very canned, he never apologized to Karen, as I would have told him if I was prosecuting the case, which I would never do. But if I was, I would have said, to Proctor at the first trial, you need to look at her and say, I apologize for that.
Right.
But even when he didn't do that, he tried to give this very monotone, it was inappropriate and da 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 da. Buchanan was not willing to do it. I mean, he seems more remorseless than Proctor, if that's even possible to believe.
Yeah, it's wild. And Maza Media, hi Maza, miss your face. I'm so glad to see you. Thank you for being here. There is, yeah, it's appalling to me. But at the end of the day, the lack of accountability within Mass State Police, it starts from the head, right? So we have to look up. We got to go further. I have so many questions for Tully now. Like, beyond, which I don't know. I don't think that will even come in. It seems that Buchanan is the, sacrificial lamb as of the name, because former Trooper Proctor is no longer.
Because what Brennan wants to do is hide from the jury the warts of the case. And that, he's trying this as a defense attorney. Okay. It's like he's gotten what it means to be a prosecutor, and that he's, at least in this case, a public servant. And he's trying to just trim it down, keep all the bad stuff out. And I guess in some sense, force the defense to call them, and so he can cross-examine. But if they don't call all these witnesses, and you're a juror and you keep hearing all this stuff about Proctor, you keep hearing about Tully, you keep hearing about Brian Higgins, they're not going to look at the defense and say, why didn't you call them? The risk here is they're going to look at Brennan and say, what are you trying to sell me here?
Yeah.
I mean, it reeks of a trial by almost like a used car salesman. It just feels like there's just, you don't need to know that. Don't worry. What do I need to do to put you in this car today and have you walk off the lot? Don't worry about that other stuff. Or as they said, look the other way, whatever whatever their clever language was.
No, absolutely. And where did you sit on, well, first Proctor getting a promotion, like him getting a excellent, or what was it? Exceeds expectations, a 4 out of 5 in his written language and communication. Huh?
What do I think of that? I think I'm stunned he didn't get a 5 out of 5.
Oh.
I mean, these people they're like bros. They're drinking buddies. Okay.
Frat. Yeah.
Fraternity, not frat. We call it
fraternity. Pardon me. Fraternity and brotherhood.
Anyway, no, I'm laughing. They're just like a bunch of bros. Okay. And it really speaks to the culture of the place and the whole flaw in their structure. Having a bunch of knuckleheads and meatheads encamped in the DA's office who work the same cases with the same prosecutors, the same time overnight, they become too cozy. And they just, potentially become too comfortable. And that's why you see a guy like Proctor has no problem texting his direct supervisor and even high-ranking supervisor, because they like it. They think it's funny. Yeah. And to me, it's just part of the whole bro culture of them. They look like a bunch of meatheads and knuckleheads. And that's why I said I would really love to have heard about, there's no women in that chat group. Why is that? Right. Who started? I mean, it's always, hindsight is always clear. Who started this text group? Why these people? Have you done this before? Right. Why not Trooper? What's her name? There's a few women troopers. Why are they not in there? Is that, do you have groups where they're involved, but you leave the conversation about the nudes to the boys club, this kind of thing? I mean, all of this just speaks so poorly of these guys. And when they tell you how much all it relates to is how much we want to make sure we, get justice and all of that, that's fine. But they're not thinking about John O'Keefe when they're talking about, I haven't seen Karen Read naked yet.
No, not at all. Not at all.
And that's the bottom line. And the reality is, a lot of the text messages, they haven't even come in yet because they don't involve panic.
That's where my next point was, though. How much did we feel that Yuri was full of shit up to his eyeballs, talking about the text, like not being aware of the proceedings, right? That he was allegedly at court. And
I have no doubt that was 100% perjury. And the reason I believe that is because he's deeply involved in the prosecution of someone else who we're not going to really talk about. Okay. And what these people have been doing in that case for years is studying fastidiously every single thing that unnamed individual states online, on YouTube, on whatever. Okay. And the things that Buchanan claims he doesn't know about, you better damn well believe have been addressed in those YouTube streams. And I would suggest to you the idea that he doesn't know about that is complete bullshit.
Yeah.
Now,
and it was
that's not Karen's fight. I'm just telling you, if you know, you know.
Yeah, and the only purpose of it, right, to act like you didn't know was to not have to read the additional text messages about the gifts from, Elizabeth, saying send it to Elizabeth, from Julie Albert, having Julie Albert offer to babysit Michael Proctor's children just 10 days before this incident occurred at 34 Fairview. And you had the balls to say to your supervisor when you went to Chris and Julie Albert's home, yeah, I know him. No problem. I can still interview him.
So, look, lawyers and very skilled lawyers can disagree about this, and I'm sure there's a lot of back and forth going on. But to me, this is a no-brainer for me personally. I'm calling Proctor on the defense case. Okay.
Oh.
And if it has to be through direct examination and we have to extract teeth the way they had to do it with Buchanan, maybe at some point he'll be deemed hostile. They won't have to. Who knows? But either way, I'm doing it. I'm getting it out there. Okay. I'm getting out all the stuff about the sister, the wife, all the other things. And I'm looking at this and I'm saying, so now Brennan gets to cross-examine Proctor. That's much easier, as you know. Doesn't have to be aggressive, but he can just lead him to what he wants. But I'm also thinking, like, what the hell does Michael Proctor have to say that this jury is going to credit? About what? Other than, oh, I never got a gift. Okay.
Yeah.
Who mentioned it? Okay. Your reaction was to basically say, well, don't give me the gift. Give it to my wife. Okay. If that's the way his thinking is, I mean, and that's just one example with this guy.
Right.
Okay? I'm getting into his whole termination hearing, the findings, all the other things that he did. You have other value through Proctor too. Don't forget. Proctor, I mean, I know it feels like it was a month ago, but it's really only a couple of weeks. He can kneecap Jennifer McCabe about a couple of things. Statements he took. Now, I don't care what you think about Michael Proctor or not. He's not saying that Jennifer McCabe was right and I was wrong in my report. Okay? That is not what cops do. And this guy's not doing it. I'm going after him on the Sallyport video, big time, that he stuffed in his pocket for 2 years that Buchanan doesn't know anything about. Really? Does anybody believe that? And also, not just the Sallyport video, the Brian Higgins video that you saw today.
Huge.
Okay? Michael Proctor knew about that for 2 years. Okay. He knew that Higgins went there. He knew that he was making phone calls, whatever it was, whether it's clear, important or not, whatever. He also knows that his story was he went there to do administrative duties and to move cars, which by all accounts, it appears, unless there's other video out there, he did not do.
No cars were moved.
No, what it appears he did was go into the office for a few minutes to get some keys maybe for another car or whatever, and go back and forth into a car, grab something, get on the phone, walk in a very, I don't want to read too much into this, but with purpose, if you will.
Yeah.
And get the hell out of there. Okay. The other thing is the other advantage of the video is you get a view of Higgins's Jeep and the plow, which is like the mystery Jeep and plow.
Yes.
Because probably the most credible witnesses the prosecution called, as you know, the kids from the car. They only called 2 of them this time, as it were. But they don't leave any ground whatsoever for the belief that Higgins's Jeep could have been there. It's not possible based on their testimony. And right now in this trial, there's only one person who says the Jeep was there, and that's Jennifer McCabe.
And I feel like today, Mr. Bederow, that everything came together. And when even it was an objection by Alan Jackson, where I was like, let him cook. When Buchanan was asked about what changed when they went from the thinking it was a domestic from the glass, and that Karen might have hit him with Officer John O'Keefe with a glass, and how did that change? And he said after Michael Proctor spoke with whom? Jennifer McCabe. And I was like, oh, it just keeps going, that it has and always will be, if you objectively look at this, that there was a narrative formed by Jennifer McCabe, and it was Karen versus Jen. And as she said, but they just listened, took it hook, line, and sinker.
The narrative obviously had to have been formed very early, because if you remember back in the testimony, and I'm not going to ever besmirch the mother of a murder victim or someone who died in an unnatural way, but John's mother's testimony was, I believe, I knew she hit him with a car, or words to that effect, or based upon how it was described to her. By whom? What she saw in the hospital. I mean, based on the arm cut and I don't know how, I really don't know how much a mother would look at their son. I suspect they would, just in that, moment of whatever. I think that's what parents do. But how that would translate a few hours later into, well, I think he got hit by a car. I mean, I've heard that somewhere. Did she testify to that? I think she did.
Yeah, she did.
Now, they didn't cross-examine her, which is understandable. Obviously, that's potentially dangerous. But why would she think that?
Right.
There is no way, and I say this with all due respect to her, that based on how he appeared,
presented,
he would have thought that looks like a car accident.
Yeah, it wouldn't to me. And again, I don't know how anybody's, their brains are working or in that manner, but we do have Paul O'Keefe specifically saying to Christina Rex in an interview right after the first mistrial, says, we didn't need Mass State Police to tell us. We knew. And we went to go look at her car that morning, right after she had left, right? And I said to my mother, she goes, I think he looks like he got hit by a car. And Paul said, we're not going to think that way. But they didn't need Mass State Police. So who did you need? Because you weren't there. Do you know what I'm saying?
Listen,
just saying.
The answer would be obvious. It would have to have come from Jennifer McCabe. I mean, it is what it is.
Yep. And so back to Higgins now at Canton Police Department. I'm sorry, Levies, we're doing the best job that we can, but me and Mr. Bederow, we're talkers. We like to talk to each other. And he has a firm stop time, 7 p.m. Go Celtics, game 4. Okay.
Must win. It's must win.
It must win. And they will. Thank you. We're asking Tiny Jesus and Tiny Mary to come through for our C's. Okay.
Don't ask Tiny Jesus. Ask Jason Tatum. Come on. Let's
Jesus and Jason Tatum. May the Lord be with you and also with you. Okay. So when Higgins goes to Canton PD, we've got him perjuring because he said, I went back to the testimony from trial 1. And he clearly says, I went there for administrative work, but then he changed it to administrative things. I moved multiple cars. Well, babe, I saw you touch 2 different cars in that parking lot. And I saw you really muffing around in that truck. I looked at it. It looked like, to me, I could be wrong, but it looked like a truck with an encapsulated like bed. And he was in the back. Then he was in the front passenger seat. Then he was in the rear passenger seat. And then he is, for a big boy, Big Neck Daddy Higgins is a big boy. All right. And he's moving. And I go, what the frig are you doing? It's snowing. Like, what are you doing? It's after 1:30 in the morning, you weirdo. It just, I don't know. I didn't see any cars move, and I didn't understand what he was doing in that vehicle as frequently as he did. I saw a small bag, or what I believe was a small bag, being moved from that truck over to his personal vehicle, and then he tucks and rolls. Then I always had questions about, like, why would you be moving government issued vehicles when you were already there earlier that day?
And drinking since the afternoon.
Oh, and Yuri said again on the stand that he believed he was like, oh, he went to the waterfall afterwards. And Jackson quickly reminded him, yeah, after he had been at the hillside drinking.
Well, after he'd been at the hillside, but after he had been in New York City drinking.
Right.
I mean, if you really want to take it all the way back. But also, you can't just look at him in isolation for that issue. You marshal all of his other mysterious testimony, if you will, from the first trial. I mean, my recollection, I haven't gone back and looked, but my recollection is that he testified that at the waterfall, everyone was just happy-go-lucky and left, and there was, happy, smiling, laughing, because in the first trial, nobody focused that part of the video where clearly see agitation. You see huddling between him and Brian Albert, and you see Chris Albert clearly trying to diffuse and get frustrated with whatever it is. And Higgins's claim is basically nothing happened, which again, you factor all that in, the jury still doesn't know that he tossed his phone in the bizarre way that he did.
Yeah.
They don't know anything about him really other than that. They learned today this was a nice thing to do on cross, to get out there, that when he met with Buchanan early in the case, he had lawyered up. Now, I'm never going to criticize anyone for the mere fact of consulting a lawyer, but this is a guy who you have been told is literally as in the clear gets. And within the span of a couple of days, he doesn't even have reason to believe that he's a suspect in anything. And he's making Buchanan go to his lawyer's office or home, whichever it was, to interview him. He's turning over cell phone records that he chooses to disclose because he had his other buddy in the FBI help him.
Matt Kelch.
Before he tossed everything in the garbage. Now you factor in all the other stuff with the text messages with Karen, what's going on at the bar. He's also the guy, if you remember, who is going to have to say somebody else did come in the house. And he's not going to tell you it's John, but he's going to tell you it's somebody who kind of fits that description.
Tall, dark hair. Yeah.
Now the only evidence is of someone in the house, because this is the way Brennan tries a case, because he doesn't want the jury to know these things. The only person who's been in the house who testified is Jen McCabe.
Yes.
Literally. I mean, there's literally no one else from the house. So she says nobody came in. Higgins is going to say somebody did. Now the question becomes, well, where in the house were you, Mr. Higgins? Were you a different area of the house? How is it that he saw a guy and Jen didn't? And that would suggest they weren't with each other.
In the basement. Well, or yes, on different floors. You were unseen. Absolutely. Totally. That 100% makes sense. And wouldn't that be some well, never mind. I won't go down a rabbit hole because we don't have the time today. But yeah, that is so true. And I also found it that if he was so trusted, right? If Brian Higgins was this, peak of virtue, right? That there was no concern. Why are you telling him that you gave me these text messages and they better be exactly what you said they are, or you're going to have consequences?
Well, that's a really good point, and one that they ought to flag for summation, because he chose to give select messages and Buchanan told you, well, this better be real. This better, as opposed to Jen McCabe, who said, I need to delete some messages. They're from my daughters. And they said, be my guest. That's cool, according to her. Now, let's assume that that's true. Then the question becomes, why did you treat Higgins with raised eyebrows? And were you more suspicious of that?
Yes.
What something led them to be a little more suspicious of him? What would that be?
Yeah. How did we get there? Right? I don't know. Just things that we ask.
You've got to call him look, you've got to get the butt dials in. And when I say in, I don't mean asking a question and having Buchanan say, I don't know anything about it. You need to spend 20 minutes with Higgins and Brian Albert going over every single detail about these, this, all you can call it is a butt dial conversation. I mean, there's nothing else you can call it. And you put it, given the timeline of the 227 search or not,
Yes.
your view on that is,
Yeah.
I mean, if I don't know how they're going to do it. You'll have to wait and see. But I mean, I'm calling Proctor, I'm calling Higgins, and I'm calling Brian Albert. I'm calling Brian Albert about the window location not coming out. I'm calling about the mysterious case of the missing dog. I want to know when that dog was walked in the morning, when it was fed, who was there, who saw it. I want to know about why it became Cora. I want to know why this story at the first trial was that, like, Nicole Albert took it to a rest stop or something and said later, and that was the end of Chloe.
On I-90, they were in like Worcester. She had to go, like, because she did back roads. I remember being like, why the fuck would she go that route?
I hear all of it. I want the jury to hear all of it. There's nothing good that I'm worried about that they're going to say. And then I want the benefit of saying in summation, these are all interesting questions that are important to your determination and which favor the defense, certainly from their view. And who had to do this? We did. And I would point right at Brandon and say, because he didn't want, don't say he, don't personalize it. The prosecution, didn't want you to know or didn't think that this was worthy of your, analysis in terms of deliberating what happened here. So I'm calling at least those three. I would think about calling Nicole Albert. I want to hear that Chloe story again. I want to hear about the 38-second phone call at 5 o'clock in the morning and hear her say that didn't happen. I want to hear about the 6:07 phone call where you could hear Jen McCabe whispering, talking to somebody. I want to know from her, where is it true that, not to get into too many details, but you and your husband were doing things at 2:22 a.m. that, might have led him to butt dial his phone and whatnot. I don't see the harm in calling them just for them to swear up and down that nobody went in the house. Because here's the reality, okay? Brian Higgins is going to say that a man who fits John O'Keefe's description went in the house. Period. Full stop. Going to say that.
Yeah. Because, hey, it's caught. And that was in his grand jury testimony. So it has to be brought up. Now, quick question, Mr. Bederow, have you ever in your life put a tablet up to your face? It could be a cell phone. It's consistent with a cell phone or tablet. I said, Yuri, come on, Mike, come on.
This isn't what you saw in the picture.
Oh, there we go. There we go. Thank you for bringing it out. Okay.
No, I've never.
Good golly.
No, I mean, look, but that again, I would make a list, and they will, I'm sure, about all the things. And that's not the biggest point in the world, obviously.
No, I'm just sorry.
No, but he just doesn't want to admit
anything.
The guy's on his phone. Period. Clearly. Okay. Proctor was the lead investigator. Okay. Proctor sent me those text messages. I saw it. I liked it. He just can't admit the most basic things. And he's clearly doing it to try to deflect. And all he's doing is inviting the argument in summation that if you can't believe him on what you see with your own eyes, why would you believe him when he says day after day after day, when the snow melted, we just went and miraculously found more taillight? I mean,
I also thought it was
you need better than him. And they don't have better than him because they didn't want to give you better than him, because they wouldn't call Proctor. They wouldn't call these people. I mean, the summation writes itself.
Yeah, and Officer John O'Keefe deserved better than all of them, in my opinion. That should be in there too. And now, was there any part of you that when you saw Proctor with in the back of that Sallyport video, we get a good, I feel as though this time, in an incredible way, Alan Jackson dissected the Sallyport video, right? Like dissected it. And for you to see Proctor standing in that back right area of that vehicle, holding his the zipper, like the folder, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, that the detectives usually have. So
I know. Yeah, it's a
yeah,
zip.
yeah.
It's like a leather notebook that zips, and
But it's got the zip, and you got, listen, if he's got one that's mesh, if he's got one that's cloth, which let me tell you right now, he doesn't have leather. If he's got the cloth has give. What could you put in that's something that has give and that you could zip around? Now, he did also, Yuri testified that Michael Proctor allegedly couldn't have left in a 6 to 7 minute round trip, which like, okay. But you know who was over there? And then who was miraculously right back at that damn Canton Police Department at Sallyport, and then went upstairs for that meeting? Tully. Okay. We know Tully was there as well. So I'm just saying, like, I get that he could testify to, I didn't see it, but you didn't hold his hand. You didn't know what, you know, everything that was going on. And 6 to 7 minutes is a pretty darn quick round trip. Just saying.
I thought they built an incredible record on the videos and the time,
Yes.
for this and that. The only thing that was a little surprising to me was I thought he was going to try to literally chop his head off with the testimony that he gave prior and really drag out for 20 minutes how you basically schnookered, you know, I guess you can't say the jury, even though everybody knows the jury from the first trial, but at the last proceeding, you know, the intention you gave the fact finder was that
true and accurate. Yeah, and it wasn't.
Because but there's a reason it matters. I mean, it just happens to be that this miraculous inversion of the video does two incredible things. It just happens to imply that the left tail light is the right.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it just happens to imply that Proctor is not in the vicinity of the right tail light. And what I thought they might do, it was literally go through the, like, you testified at the first trial, Q, A, and, you know, by the way, the man who questioned you is that guy right there, like, who's staring at the wall, twirling pencils. And, like, you prepped before you testified. You talked about this. You went over this, just like you did with Mr. Brennan before this case. Not really. And really just crush on the testimony and have Buchanan try to defend himself and say nothing of the sort. So I mean, all the facts came out. It was great. It's going to be incredible for summation. I'm surprised that they didn't try to literally knock him out, literally, like, have him counted out by the referee in front of the jury.
This jury. Yeah.
Yeah, because what he did in the first trial, and frankly, Lally too, was disgraceful, and there's no way to spin it, okay? They tried to hoodwink the jury, okay?
Right.
The other question that you never saw when Buchanan goes like, well, it was accurate other than that, and da-da-da-da, you never took any steps to tell the jury that it was a mirror image, and just so you're clear, that's not the correct taillight at issue in this case. And I guarantee you his answer would have been, I wasn't asked. At which point Lally would creep under the table and you would say, you believe in order to clarify a misconception in front of a jury that you need to be asked? You don't have an affirmative duty? I mean, I'm just surprised. They could have just clobbered him, but they got the evidence out really, really well. And I think definitely the evidence of all the videos and timelines and timestamps was much better than the first trial. And the part at the end where they established that the other video, the one that you can barely see,
Yes,
which does show the right taillight, although you can't see it, that it just miraculously deletes the 5:35 timeline where they, in theory, you would have been able to see what they were doing, and that's just inexplicably not on, and that's not going to be good come summation. And there's nothing that Brennan can do to fix that. And if he's really going to call a witness from the DA's office, the IT woman, or someone else to try to say, well, the video is always inverted, Well, that's great. But guess what? You have the burden of proof. It's on you to prove the case. And, you know,
Yeah,
you have too many coincidences here. The video either doesn't work, it's in crappy condition, it's inverted, the correct time skips. We're missing the ring video from this time, which now you know, oh, by the way, it wasn't Karen and her father who did it. I mean, what a shameful suggestion that was before, when even Buchanan is like, yeah, there's no evidence Karen did that. Proctor is the one who looked at the video. The missing library video. I mean, you could go on and on. And without the burden of proof, like the defense has, you point out all this and you say, look, you can conclude one of two things. They're corrupt and they deleted it all, or it's just an incredible misfortune for them, but you can't convict her beyond a reasonable doubt where they don't have any evidence, period.
right. Yeah, and I'm really actually surprised about the ring video still, because we know via Trooper Guarino, not Gian Tuco, who was actually a Whitey Bulger, okay, one of the cops in the Whitey Bulger case, but neither here nor there. We know that he testified that Officer John O'Keefe's cell phone was the only, device that contacted Ring. But I have been seeing things creep up with the anti-free Karen Read, saying and reminding me that there was something deleted. And I believe that will show it had to have been someone that was, either Trooper Proctor or somebody, if Ring comes, because the prosecution has called them as material witness. I say, bring them, baby, because there's nothing to hide. Karen never had access. She didn't know his passcode. He definitely didn't give it to her. She did have access to the upstairs desktop, right? But it was never logged in from that device. I don't know how many times we need to say that to anyone,
I mean, look, everything they do it's shameful. And I think it's worse for, obviously, lawyers who do this for a living. You look at the way they do this and you just shake your head. I think it's even doubly worse for those who did it from the prosecution side and say, I can't believe they're doing this. But I mean, they basically have already implied, okay, that Karen and her father, okay, went upstairs and he somehow helped, literally within hours of this incident, do these terrible things and cover up a crime. And they just throw it out there, no evidence, no nothing.
Yeah.
And make these accusations. And it's just, they have no shame.
Yeah. Well, everything comes around, and I believe that there will always be light from shown, when the darkness is the darkest. And I think that Karen, just keep the faith, in my opinion. And I just truly believe that this is about to be, it already is, but my brain is about to explode with all of the stuff going on, and the duckery in which we see continue in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Now, the other part of that Sallyport, part of today, was the bald man. Oh, still shot of the bald man on January 30th, 2022.
That's clear. That's Berkowitz.
I thought that was Berkey too. People were saying Proctor or Albert. I'm like, that's Berkey, baby.
No. That's Berkowitz.
Yeah. Yeah. So he either touching the taillight or close to it.
That is the recused chief of police who has a vehicle in his Sallyport for some reason that he's examining a few days before he and his Coke bottle glasses, driving by at driving speed, happened to see a piece of taillight that nobody else ever saw, including, by the way, anyone who lived in the Albert house. You don't think that at any time anybody walking down the street or living in that house would have said, oh my God, look at that. There's a giant piece of taillight. But,
that's wild.
Police chief with his poor vision, who's supposed to be recused, who's hanging out in the Sallyport and just driving by because he's got nothing else to do, and finds this. you know, again, it's another one of these just amazing coincidences.
Yes, and I love that too. Not the Coke bottles, not the Coke bottle glasses. I mean, he's just got in the rain, you know.
By the way,
And I never even thought about that.
that was not a small piece of lens that he
No.
allegedly recovered, and you'd have to believe that nobody in all that time, even with the snow apparently melting and with all this other evidence, you know, coming to the surface and revealing itself, that of all the people in all the towns of all the times, you know, in all the gin joints in all the towns, it happens to be the police chief gratuitously driving by who finds the taillight.
Yeah.
I mean, you can believe this, but you shouldn't.
Right. Yeah. I was born at night, Mr. Bederow, not last night, babe. Okay.
Right.
There it is. Thoughts about, just because it's on my brain this very second, the move by Brian Brennan for Aruba.
Desperate and silly. Look,
I said, wow.
I mean, look, first of all, put the law aside with the whole double jeopardy.
Mm-hmm.
It's obvious the first jury had no use for a murder charge, okay? And most seasoned prosecutors would recognize that and say, that's worth consideration. So I'm just going to focus on a different charge, whatever. That's not how he works. Fine, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to bring a murder case. Fine. You don't have to have, you know, premeditated in the sense it doesn't have to be planned, thought out.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, but you always want to have what they call a motive. Okay. I mean, you don't need one, but it helps to have an explanation to a jury as to
right.
You know, why this happened. Okay.
Yeah. Natural human question.
If this guy gets up with a straight face and stares at the jury and suggests that the reason this happened is because Karen saw John O'Keefe either kiss or not kiss, whatever, the Sullivan girl in Aruba,
mm-hmm.
and they had words, and she somehow held this, just, you know, stewing over this, and they had some arguments, they made up, they had discussions, they were having a good time that night, they clearly had arguments, she got upset with her, you know, with him, excuse me, as you know, some of the messages when he didn't come back. But
yep.
if you are a prosecutor and you get up with a straight face and suggest that what led to this was anger over what happened in Aruba a month earlier, I would say, if you can pardon my French,
I can.
You've lost your fucking mind. I mean, it's just stupid, because the penalty for Aruba, if you will, the anger for Aruba was the Higgins text chain. That's what that will look at the timeline. It starts right after that, okay? And look at Higgins. Look at Karen.
Yeah.
You know, the heart can want whatever the heart wants and all
God
of that.
Bless him. Bless his heart.
But let's be realistic here, okay?
Yeah.
People like Karen generally don't pursue people like Higgins initially, and then when you start seeing the dialogue, most definitely, okay? Because
Stage
I think
5 clinger.
Any normal woman at that point is, you know, if they really meant it, they're running away. I mean, this guy is awesome. But on the other hand, she's lashing out.
You wear a belt, Karen?
Yeah. Oh God, it was. By the way, having Buchanan read those was chef's kiss. That was that was good. Anyway, the point is, God, what was the point? Now I'm thinking about like Theo by Buchanan reading. You know, no. The point is,
Karen was not interested.
Her going to Higgins was a way to seek validation from
Stella got her groove back.
You know, who's kind of a slob. He's kind of a, you know, overweight, drunk kind of. You know, he is what he is, okay? But he's showering her with compliments. She's angry about what happened or what she thinks happened in Aruba. And then what does she do? She just cuts him off, which, by the way, if anything, would suggest, because I'm okay with John, like it's over. And you can see it when you look at the waterfall video. I don't know if it's deliberate or not, but she's 5 feet away and never once acknowledges him while he's looking over and texting and stewing and doing whatever he's doing. So why does he think, well, now that those text messages have come in, that I'm going to, argue that her motive for doing this or the reason for this crime was anger over Higgins that she cut off days earlier? I mean,
that doesn't make sense. And I've always said, and you know this, is that like the fact that Karen didn't pop Marietta Sullivan that day or like smash, anybody, for you to give a good, hey, go F yourself to a broad that you think is trying to make out with your boyfriend near an elevator, that is the lightest, like Boston, how do you do, I've ever seen. You know what I'm saying? Like that doesn't show a propensity to violence or anything to me. So it's ridiculous. It's insulting. And it's insulting, in my opinion, that Hank wrote it as like a domestic violence thing. I was like, you're saying Karen, was a domestic abuser to Officer O'Keefe? That's a low that is really hard to come back from.
The problem in this case with Canon is, he wants to serve the jury medium rare filet mignon, okay? But all he's got is overcooked ground beef, and he's trying to give it to them as if it's a fine steak, and it's not. Yeah. And adding this garbage is just all it does as a prosecutor is discredit you. And that's your number one asset as a prosecutor is the jury.
Obviously.
You want the jury to find you credible, believable, with integrity, because the role of the prosecutor is like to tell the jury, I'm gonna take you from A to here, where conviction. I'm gonna hold your hand, and you can trust me, and I'm gonna do it. And all this guy is doing is throwing shit at the wall with silly arguments, silly evidence, while hiding anything that arguably hurts. And in my experience, and lawyers can differ, juries don't like that. They don't like not being told. I mean, the reality is, if it wasn't for the defense, you literally would never hear the name Michael Proctor in this case. If they did not open on Proctor, it did not cross on Proctor, you would not hear the name Michael Proctor. You've probably heard the name Brian Albert 4 times, entire case. You just, these are things that he just wants to put down the memory hole and say, forget, it never happened. Don't worry about it, instead of confronting head on. I'm not saying you need to call 30 witnesses like Lally did and try to discredit the defense before they've argued it. But, they're making points. What they're going to do, not calling Proctor, not calling Tully, and doing these other things. It's a way to do it, but I just don't think the jury's going to buy this.
Yeah, I don't either. And another thing I was wondering, just at the end of today, Mr. Bederow, I know that Judge Canoni did allow for extra minutes, and that's kind of big doings for her. But I also feel like she abruptly cut off Alan Jackson. And do you think that he was able to, because we know that Trooper Buchanan will not be back, that he finished up 3 full days. Oh, he's going to need Epsom salt when he gets home, a nice bath run. But do you think that at the end it was an appropriate bow on him, or maybe should she have like called the day and then started with him again?
No, I can totally understand getting him out of there. Jury's had enough, judges had enough, the witnesses had enough. That's fine. It's the way that she does it, which is so bothersome. She basically, how much longer? I'm not holding you. Once again, signaling, are we almost done? And again, even the way she says it.
Yeah.
Not literally, just to how much more, but that the implication of the jury is, I'm done. And the risk is that the jury looks at the judge as the high person. If she's done, should we be done? Is this run its course? So she shouldn't do that. But then when he says, I can do it in 10 or 15 minutes, and the jury says, let's go.
Keep it. Yeah.
I take that as I hate to read tea leaves into this kind of stuff, but if this is what we're doing, I take that as a very good sign. They're like, let's go. I'm with you. Let's finish it. I don't want this guy back, and I'm enjoying what you're doing, which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
But then she comes back a few minutes or 10 minutes later and says, well, you said finally, so I thought that was your last question. And bless it, by the way, you know, it's funny because a lot of people say, oh my God, he's too intense and he runs the risk of offending the juries. No, okay. He's really good at this. Just like this is like lawyer talk. Okay. He's really good at this. He's very charismatic, very likable, and has a tolerance of dealing with the judge, which is really high, even though, you know, inside he's thinking like, get the, you know, so I mean, I think it went well, but these constant gratuitous comments from the judge are just, they're not appropriate. They're just not. I don't know that it matters in the grand scheme that the jury is buying into this or thinking about it, but there's no reason for her to be doing this.
No, and on that point too, Mr. Bederow, it's like, now correct me if I'm wrong, but a jury is going to look toward Judge Canon as like the North Star, right? Like you can think that the prosecution are supposed to be delivering justice. You can think that the defense, just by nature, I'm saying your inherent bias, right? But your judge is supposed to be the North Star. Right. And when I hear her every day, just it's her tone, it is the way in which she interacts with each attorney, each side. I get that you lean prosecution, but babe, there is no ability for her to keep that balance to me when I'm watching it. Like she is so out of whack with the responses and and what she expects of and sustains even with her objection, everything. Like it feels so biased that I fear that our jury, if they're looking at Judge Canon as that North Star, is she giving a bad impression? Is she doing damage to the jury at this time?
She shouldn't be doing what she's doing.
Yeah.
At the same time, I don't want to overstate it and think, oh
yeah.
my God, this case is in jeopardy because
no, yeah, I get what you're saying.
I mean, look, the jury is going to do whatever they do. They're going to be much more interested in the back and forth with the witnesses.
Yeah,
I would think the jury would be less impacted by the end of the day, the judge saying, "Are you done?" as opposed to Yuri Buchanan. Excuse me.
Oh, my love.
With
the allergies.
With a straight face. You know, in a trial of the century kind of situation on national TV, which, you know, again, he's apparently unaware of.
Oh.
Putting that aside, literally.
I know they stream it.
Literally.
On national television, no.
Arguing with a lawyer that receiving a text about no nudes yet and putting a thumbs up that he was only acknowledging receipt of the text. And I think that that's the kind of stuff that they'll say at the end of the day when they go home, you know, sit down and, you know, of course, they're not going to watch any coverage and because they don't do that.
Right.
But, you know, pour themselves a drink and hopefully watch a, you know, big win tonight that they think, what's the takeaway from today? And the takeaway from today is, my God, that witness has no credibility. And I just don't believe anything he says that's not corroborated every which way till Sunday by other, you know, incorruptible evidence. I mean, so I think that's the kind of thing that will resonate with a jury much more than these gratuitous and inappropriate comments by the judge.
Yes, agreed. Now, we know that the burden of proof is 100% on the Commonwealth. I feel, just in my opinion, Mr. Bederow, that this year and this trial, even with the roadblocks in which the defense has continuously met, right, either by Judge Canoni's rulings, just witnesses that are really doubling, tripling down, the evidence that has come in is, I think, 1000% showing you how there could have been an alternate story, right? If you're looking at last year's trial, the first trial, you saw that, yes, people believed reasonable doubt. Did they believe, like, were they able to lay the foundation of a third party culprit appropriately for them to say, I'm going to check your box, or not guilty versus guilty, right? Now in this trial, seeing, for me, the perjury on the stand with the feds and Jennifer McCabe, hearing that, the entire direction of the investigation changed based on who? Jennifer McCabe's calls to both Lank and then Proctor. Okay. Then we have Brian Higgins at Canton Police Department with his phone, seeing him just fiddle the fuck around for unknown reasons because you weren't doing what you said you were there for. I mean, this is all foundation to me of things I can't believe in this many coincidences. Can you? Right?
No, I mean, no, I mean, I don't think at this point they've proven anything other than she had some drinks. I mean, I think they've proven that.
Yeah.
And there is some version of a statement, whether it's did I hit him, or whatever, that she said, and that's not even from the credible witnesses because they're not credible, but through these clips they're playing. But of course, they're ignoring the fact that even if she said that in an emotional state and whatnot, that is always going to be less reliable than the science. And in one of those clips, which I don't understand why they played it, because in one of those clips, they actually helped the defense, at least in summation, offer a form of explanation. I think she said, Jen kept telling me something along those lines. I mean,
yes.
So I just don't think they thought that out very carefully. That's one of the clips that, like, you don't play. But that's the evidence at this point, are a few clips that are potentially out of context, not explained, and some video and some other statements that she had some drinks. But the other problem they have, the alcohol test that they're using is, it's a little sketchy, it's not reliable. So the argument can become, well, what's the best evidence of when somebody was drinking and driving, assuming the first would be somebody witnessed it. Well, so far you've had two witnesses testify that they actually observed Karen Read driving, and she drove perfectly. She was on the right side of the road. She used her blinker. She turned properly, and she was waiting at 10 and 2 and blah, blah, blah. She put her light
on. Yep.
That's not bad driving. Other ways, and having dealt with these kinds of cases all the time, well, what are the observations of her? Well, nobody is going to say that she seemed lit up or smelled like alcohol or was unsteady on her feet or anything like that. Nobody who was out with her that night. And no police officers, for really two reasons. Number one, they're not calling any of the first responding police officers, which is a joke. And number two, even if they did, from the first trial, none of them talked to her about it. None of them asked her how much she was drinking. None of them said, ma'am, I smell alcohol in your breath.
No.
None of them asked her to take an intoxilizer, like a portable.
Yeah, a breathalyzer, yeah.
Well, there's a portable test even on the scene. Then you do a breath test. None of them asked her to take some of what they call the field test.
Mm-hmm.
There's really not that much indicia other than, no question, there's video of her having drinks and that sort of thing. But other than that, there's, in the fourth week of this, there isn't much evidence of her doing anything.
And the final part, I just wanted to ask you what you thought about, Mr. Bederow, was the bag of evidence, right? The bag of tricks, if you will, brought out by Hank Brennan on recross or redirect rather. And he says, the defense asked you about all this evidence and I didn't, right? And I'm like, okay, where are we going here? I thought that was only helpful to the defense to show them how large those pieces found on the 18th were. The last pieces of taillight discovered, unearthed, revealed, if you will, were over 6 inches, greater than 6 inches. Cause that little the projector shit, it shows you the ruler, but like, I don't know. I'm a visual bitch, so I'm sitting there like, when I see him hold it, I go, oh, right. Like, what are we doing here? And are you out of your tree, Hank Brennan, for presenting that to the jury and then asking them to tell you the date?
So one of the interesting things about this case is his redirects are awful. That's like, he's very thorough and very succinct on direct. He is an experienced lawyer. He is a good lawyer. Even, I'm not a fan of his. I find a lot of what he does detestable and all that, but he's not an unskilled lawyer. On redirect, he just seems to do things that don't help. And why you would ever on redirect draw attention to Michael Proctor recovering large taillight pieces. And by the way, I wasn't there with him. Okay. So now we're taking Proctor's word for it. I don't know why you would even think about doing that. Okay.
Yeah.
The problem he's going to have, he's already established through Buchanan that all of the taillight pieces, were generally in the same area, whatever the hell that means. But if that's the case, it makes no sense that it would take 3 weeks to recover all this stuff. So I honestly, maybe it's because he hasn't been a prosecutor in a long time. I mean, none of us have been, but redirect is just supposed to be to clean up points on cross to the extent you feel you need to. But this is a sign of how shitty the case is, and maybe you should reevaluate your life choices in general. The case on a macro level than a micro level. If you're redirecting Buchanan to say that Proctor recovered taillight pieces when you weren't there to try to help Buchanan's credibility, but at the same time kneecapping Proctor, in the grand scheme, you're not really helping yourself.
Not one bit. And Kate was traveling all day, but Yuri's not coming back tomorrow, right? Right, Mr. Bederow?
He's done.
Yeah, she said you don't have to come back tomorrow. Thank you, Mr. Buchanan. And he finally got off the stand.
Right.
All right. Well, I'm going to say to you, have a couple minutes. It's 6:48. Okay. We've got a game. We've got game 4. And we don't have time for anything except to maybe put on your lucky shirt. Do you have a lucky Celtic shirt?
I've got a few.
You have a few?
Got a few. Yeah.
Okay. Well, put it on because we need to win. We must win tonight in order to move forward. And I appreciate you. You are the best to ever do it. You've talked everyone off the ledge. What an interesting day. What incredible new evidence for me to be able to, and for you, well, not you, but for me to be able to put my eyes on that I had never seen. And I just think, we're headed in the correct direction and justice will be done here. And that is, in my opinion, to free Karen Read. And thank you, Mr. Bederow.
Thank you. I hope everyone, including the special people from overseas who are watching again. There's a shout out.
Oh, the overseas friends. Okay. I'll see you. Maybe you could come on next week with me. Not trying to pressure you. Yes, I am. Okay. Love you face. Bye. Oh, loveys. Mr. Bederow. Is he the best? Yes, he is. We've made it through another stream. Day 14 is in the books, Commonwealth versus Karen Read. And I got one thing to say to you, loveys. We're doing this. The second trial, in my opinion, will be the last. This is a momentum that is building. God bless Alan Jackson, David Yannetti, who's my bowl of spaghetti, Liza Little, and Mr. Alessi, and Karen, her family, and the O'Keefes. We keep them in our prayers. And we also pray for our Celtics via Jason Tatum. Okay? Guess what? Tiny Jesus. Nope. Tiny Mary. Tiny Jesus. Bid you adieu. I love your faces. I'll see you tomorrow night, guys. Bye.